Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present to you. Am I calling you by your first recording artist name or your second recording artist name?
Srully, I think, is the one we should go with.
Okay.
Let's pick Srully.
Please
Yes.
welcome singer known as Srully Williger. Srully, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Welcome.
So I was watching the 24/6 status last week, and this notification popped up that Srully is celebrating 30 years since your debut album. Has it really been that long?
Well, time flies when you're having fun, right? Yeah, I can't believe myself it's 30 years. The reason why I know that, I guess, is because I remember my son was born. My second son was born right around then, and we celebrated his 30th birthday. So hey, if it's his 30th birthday, then it must be 30 years since Uklau.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, we weren't around 30 years ago, so we thought it would be fun to talk to you on the phone and pretend like this is a brand new album and get some information. As many of you might remember, I did something for Amudim. We did a roundtable just last year with Yitzy Bald, Srully Williger, and Shlomi Dex. And we found some stuff about your album that we didn't know. Srully, what point in your career did you decide to do an album? Because obviously you were a wedding singer at the point, right?
You know what? Those days there wasn't even so much wedding singers.
Correct.
Let's go back to the
early
the
90s.
beginning of in the early 90s. It was basically the orchestra, whoever the keyboard player or there was a guitarist. Remember, let's see, Ari Pollack. Remember those days?
Yeah, the band leader.
And the band leader, Yossi Rosenberg, Gani, whether it was some Neshama Chevra, the band leader who was playing an instrument was the one that was doing the singing. This new phenomenon, it's not so new anymore, obviously,
right,
of having a wedding singer was just starting then. It actually started, I think, more by the Hasidim, because they all had one-man bands. And remember, Michal Schnitzler, Olav Shalom, he was, I think, the first one that really brought this thing of a wedding singer to the fore. And then, from there, it spread out. Now it's like there's no such thing as not having a wedding.
Now it's like
singer.
You're going to have a wedding without a singer? Are you crazy? You can't use the keyboard.
It's not even a thing, right? So I mean, I was not singing at weddings then. I wasn't singing. I was singing all my life as a child. I was in 613 Torah Avenue. That was, I think, from my first recordings.
Right.
I did a few radio commercials, but for those that don't know what a radio is, all your listeners might not know what a radio is, but they still have them in cars, I believe. I don't even know if they have them in cars anymore, actually.
It was like a tape recorder that picked up a signal that broadcasted into your house.
Yes, something like that.
There you go.
I did a few radio commercials for Swirling Chocolate and some others. I remember I was on various albums here and there, and as a child soloist, I had many solos in Amudei Sheish Boys Choir.
Right.
So that was like my first real recording. There was a couple of great songs on there. Shabechi Yerushalayim, Shabechi Yerushalayim, Es Hashem. That was myself, and and after that, then as a teenager, I was singing, and I sang at a lot of my friends' weddings. And after I got married, a couple of years after, we decided to make a record, as it's called then.
Or you were at the stage when we were kind of transitioning in those few years after you released from actual cassettes to CDs. I think from 95 to 2000, that was the transition time. Right.
When the Hook album, The Voice of a New Generation, we hardly even did CDs. We did tapes.
Correct. It was cassettes. I had it on cassette at home.
Right. It was cassette, and it's funny because I just happened to have found a cassette of The Voice of a New Generation last week in a drawer sitting in my house, and I recorded a 15, 16 second of it, and I posted it out there, and I don't even know, but I just put it on my status. And at the end of the day, it was like thousands and thousands, not just from me. Like people took it and people said, "Oh, I saw your thing. I saw that tape." I said, "I don't even know." Like I think it'll go out to a couple of hundred people, not to thousands. And then I guess from 24/6 might have picked it up from there as well. And I pulling out a tape from my drawer of the Voice of a New Generation. And so I guess it spiraled out from there. But it was very cool.
Srully, this generation's just not going to know what a pencil and a cassette has to do with each other.
But you had to find the right pencil also.
You have to wear the one that has the sides on it. You couldn't use a circular one. It had to be one that was
with like an octagon or something.
That's right.
And the sipuk hanefesh, the satisfaction you had when you were able to roll back that tape with the pencil,
right.
It's gewaldic.
There was no skipping to the next song. You had to fast forward, stop, play, see where you're at. Fast forward, stop, play, rewind. You went too fast. Okay, so when we were at this Amudim event, we were talking about your career. Everybody knows your album was produced by Yerachmiel Begun. Of course, he had some songs on the album. Miami's on the album. But when we were talking, I think Yitzy Bald said that he started off, helping you along with your album, almost in a producer way.
Yes. Yes, he was. We didn't have Yerachmiel Begun in mind when me and him started doing this. But, Yitzy has never produced before, for whatever
at that point
means.
Of his career, right
at the point of his career, and I was new, so it was suggested that why don't we try to latch on to someone that's a producer. And I have worked with Yerachmiel Begun before. I was not in the Miami Boys Choir, but there was an album that he put out called Klal Yisrael Together, and he had a Yiddish song on there called the Gedolei Hadar. It was written, I think it was the same year that Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Moshe Feinstein passed away in that same year, and he wrote a song with Yiddish lyrics. He wrote the song, he didn't write the words. He wrote a beautiful song called the Gedolei Hadar, and he did not have anyone in the choir at that time to sing it. And so a mutual friend of ours, I think it was actually Shlomi Reich, not Shlomi Reich, it was Aryeh Friedman, I think his name was. He was the one that said, why don't you... no, you know what? It was Shlomi Reich, I think. Aryeh Friedman was the one that made the shidduch a little later.
For those of you that don't know, Shlomi Reich has been on choirs on probably hundreds of albums.
Yeah, back in the day, he was on he must have sung on hundreds and hundreds of tapes or records.
Yeah.
Back in the Pirchei day.
100%.
So I think he said, why don't you reach out to Srully Williger, and I think Yerachmiel Begun came to my house. I was living then in Borough Park with my parents, and I think he said, okay, let's you do that song. I was like at the end of my child voice. I think I might have even been. I remember being 16. I think I was still 16 when I sang as a child soloist for that song. And then I guess a few years later, I figure 8 or 9 years later, we revisited of him producing the album. So that's the basic shidduch of how that came about.
And he did feature you in Miami Experience Volume 1. That was probably what? That was like 92 or 93, right? That was before the album came out.
That was a year, a good year or two before the album even came out. So, it was a lot of, Hu Klal was one of those songs that was, a shtickle out before it really, really, really came out. Yeshivas was singing it, camps was singing it. So there was a lot of noise around Hu Klal before it was actually released.
Now, Srully Williger with us via telephone. We're talking about the release of his debut album 30 years ago. The voice of a new generation. Srully, how hard was it choosing the title track of this album? Was this something you debated about, or Yerachmiel always knew this was going to be the title track?
Well, it happened. It happens to be a great name, right?
It
voice
does
of
happen
a new
to be a great
generation,
name.
going back 30 years ago. So it's a song that he composed, and with the lyrics being the voice of a new generation. So that was obviously a no-brainer for that introduction. It's great.
So you're saying there was never going to be another title track. That was it. You're never going to call it Hu Klal 2.0, Hu Klal or something like that.
I'm never gonna call it Hu Klal. We're never gonna call it. Look where Tata went. Tata is a song that also it's even till today people are singing it at kumsitzes and for davening and for tefillas and then that was obviously sung at, if you remember, in the a year or two after I released the album, they had that Siyum Shas, the first Siyum Shas
100%
in the big Madison Square Garden and in Nassau Coliseum. That night is when after I finished singing in Madison Square Garden, I was police escorted to the Nassau Coliseum to sing Ani Maamin over there by the time they finished. So that was an exciting evening as well.
So I don't have the booklet for the album, so I know you have a couple songs from Yitzy. You have some songs from Yerachmiel. Anybody else wrote songs for the album that we don't know about?
Off the top of my head, I do not believe so. I know there's Avinu, Tata is from Yitzy Bald, Dahu Yerusa is from Yitzy Bald, Huklal is from Yitzy Bald, I think Shalom Aleichem, right? Shalom Aleichem, I think is from Shalom Aleichem. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. Shalom Aleichem, it's also Yitzy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have it in front of me, as you say, but there was quite a few from both of them. Yes.
Well, let's talk about your career for a minute. You said you did a Yiddish song for Yerachmiel Begun, but through the years you've had several Yiddish songs. I mean, is Yiddish a language that you're comfortable enough singing? Meaning you grew up with it, you understand it well, or like how did you get into doing Yiddish songs as a mainstream singer on your albums?
Right. Well, back in the day when even like a yeshiva tarvadas,
mm-hmm.
you learned in Yiddish. Now even the Haimish yeshivas are doing Vayomer and he said.
Right.
Even the mainstream Haimish / Hasidish yeshivas in Brooklyn, like the Torah Tamimas are not doing Vayomer and Eric Zok. I don't believe so. Tarvadas is not doing V'yidaber Hashem al Moshe Laim and the Ivashat Geretz Moshe. Maybe in pre-1A or first grade, but then they completely switched to
they transition
to
over. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but 30 years ago, I mean, we're talking in the 70s over here, right?
Right.
Yeshivas were Yiddish, so you learned Yiddish then, and my father, Olav Shalom, was more of a Hasidic Yid,
mm-hmm.
And my Zayda, and so was, and it was a familiar language for me. So it now I only do English mitzvahs, so I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how did that happen. You're like, okay, I'm going to do, let's see, I'll do Iddish Kinder on that album, and then I'll do Dar Geula on that album, and you're like, what? Then I just want to go English. That's it. I'm going to take.
And then I have I did a gorgeous, gorgeous Yiddish song. It's an album that came out after The Voice of a New Generation that Suki and Ding and Yerachmiel Begun produced together, Yerushalayim. It's a gorgeous Yiddish song.
Right.
I can't, but it's a stunning, stunning Yiddish song. And also, back in the day, MBD and Avram Fried,
Obviously.
They were doing that thing also. They were doing one English song, and then each album had that token Yiddish song and a token English song. Now you don't have that either. Now the truth of what came now is a lot of like the Hebrew, to Israeli Ivrit style stuff.
Correct.
That that people are doing. Even if you're a regular Haimish singer, all of a sudden you became Israeli.
Mm-hmm.
But so I guess it's the styles changed throughout the generations. I guess not even the years.
So Srully, when your album came out back in the day, let's go back a little bit. So you had to do what? You had to take a cover of Country Yossi magazine if you wanted to get some attention, right? Which you did probably.
Yes, yeah, you have to take a cover of Country Yossi, of course.
Go on the Country Yossi radio show.
In Chicago also. What's her paper? Miriam Schreiber's paper.
There's a paper in Chicago you had to do back then, yeah.
Yeah, because today it's not normal. Today you put out Today I could right now when I hang up from you, record on WhatsApp something, and it could reach the farthest places of the world.
Correct.
And it could be popular in 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day, it was 3 months till it got to Eretz Yisrael. It sold in stores in New York for 2-3 weeks, and then a month later, UPS sent it to Chicago and California and Cleveland. It's a different world.
Correct. It took time for it to be available everywhere.
Different places, different stores, right?
Correct. So you did Country Yossi. I'm assuming you went on the Country Yossi show. You went on the Nachum Siegel show.
Yes, of course.
What else was there to do?
You're on the Nachum Siegel network. I have a great story with Nachum Siegel.
Let's go.
30 years ago. He'll remember this too. So back in the day, you weren't able to email your song or WhatsApp your song to you. Yossi, please do me a favor. I'm coming out with a song. Do me a favor, play it on your whatever podcast today.
You have to send in a cassette.
It was like 3:34 in the morning when we finished mastering. It's called when I got a hold of the master CD from Systems 2 from the studio. I drove in the morning to Nachum Siegel to meet him on the Lower East Side, to give him the physical CD to play that morning.
Wow.
Uklal. Yeah. But wait, there's more. So I go into his building, And of course, Nachum Siegel, he's, Kanai Nahara, a very tall, good-looking man, right?
Correct.
So I go and I go into the building. He's by the elevator, and I go, are you Nachum Siegel? Like, his back was towards me. He didn't see me.
Mm-hmm.
Are you Nachum Siegel? For some reason, he got so frightened that, like, he's going to, like, someone's shooting him or something, that he was a mamish. I don't want to use the chas v'shalom, the word angry at me, but he was, like, a little upset that I did that. Like, well, what are you doing? And it's also like 5 in the morning, because he went to his show. He got to his show at, like, who knows when, and he went to New Jersey, right? He was recording. Correct. Right. So it was like a funny incident.
In Jersey City, yeah.
Yeah, it took a few years to repair that relationship. No, but Baruch Hashem, it's an interesting anecdote to how you had to deliver an actual CD to the radio host, unlike today.
Very cool. Srully Williger with us by a telephone. Then you went from being Yisrael to Srully, releasing a bunch of albums, then releasing Kalbach albums, becoming a Kalbach singer, becoming a chazan in a shul, and now transitioning into English mitzvah dances.
Yes, so I believe you were at a couple of them already, right?
I was at 2 of them, that's right, but my nephews.
Yes, right. I actually just had one last night, which was very, very geschmack. It was local in Borough Park. I live in Flatbush. Many of them. Lakewood obviously has thousands and thousands of from people living there, and even if you don't live there, one side is from, not from Lakewood, and the other one side, I find myself in Lakewood a lot as well. Mm-hmm. But last night was local, but yeah, so it's 90. I would say 95%, 96% is English, and of course there are other Zaydas that want Yiddish for them. The older grandparents, so we do for them as well. Obviously Yiddish, which we've spoken about before, I could do. But as I say, the focus on the market is there's a lot of Batchanim out there, excellent Batchanim, and but I figured that there's a niche in the market that, forget about the Chassan Kala not knowing Yiddish these days, but the Machatanim are so young, right? Machatanim are 40, 41, 42 years old. So many that I'm doing is the Machatanim are already 12, 13 years younger than me.
Correct.
And ich bin nicht ein älterer Yid,
Depends
but you have the young, yeah, right. You have young Machatanim. The Machatanim themselves are in the low 40s. The kids are getting married. And so this type of mitzvah dance really, really works for that market. So Baruch Hashem, it's picked up, it's picking up, it's busy, Baruch Hashem. So and I love it. I love doing it. I love speaking to people. I love entertaining and being with and being Mesameach Chassan Kala. So it's a great way to be doing that.
It definitely is, and it's interesting how it's technically a Hasidic minhag. But the people who have experienced it, they know that it brings so much there, because they say the neshamas of the people that are not there come down to the chuppah. They're there at the time of simcha. So, to give them that acknowledgement, to talk about the grandparents, sometimes the parents, sometimes unfortunately a sibling, to bring that even sadness, a connection is something that, even the Kalta Lutfaks can feel, right?
Yeah. You mentioned the sibling. Last night I had actually that, a sister of the Kala, was, very sick for many, many years and passed away, and it's a sibling, it's a child of the parents. So, and they want it to be mentioned, and, it's difficult, but you have to bring it out in a nice way. And, again, you don't want to, chas v'shalom, make it a divrei hesped, a levaya, because it is a time of simcha, but it is to be masked in the shama that's there, and it's a beautiful thing. My wife always says, it's nothing to do with Hasidish. I don't think the music is over. Yerushalayim, and you just go home. It's not geschmack to end the chasana that way. That's it. Bye-bye.
You need to wind back all that emotion that you've experienced over the last 6 hours.
Yeah, so it's a mitzvah dance with nothing to do so much with Hasidish and Hagim. It's a nice end of an evening,
100%. Srully, 2 questions before I let you go. Question 1 is, can you listen back to your debut album now, and what do you think of your voice listening back to it 30 years later? Right,
so I have listened here and there. I think I remember. I think last week I put it on. It's very smooth. The voice is very pure. It's also very, very innocent. Meaning, you don't hear like you hear now. Sometimes when you hear singers in the studio, they're like you hear every single like line and this that they're making it so perfect and so this and
nuances.
Yeah, the new and the digital sound. There was no digital back then. There was
Right.
no.
It was all analog.
There was no auto tune.
Right.
For whatever, if listeners know what that is or not, there's no auto tune to make you, sound even a little better. Even the all the reverbs and the effects and everything that makes a singer and the music pop like it is today. They didn't have those in those days. Yes, it was, it was good music. It was electric. It was like in those days. That was the beginning of the synthesizer. You know what I'm saying? The electric sounding piano. Like fake strings, you couldn't even do it back then because it just didn't sound good. Today, when you put on an album and you hear a beautiful string section, it's really mimics a symphony orchestra. Correct. You couldn't do that back then. Back then, you had to have a real string section, real horns, real. There's no electric drums. Real. It was just starting, then.
But are you critical though? Are you critical of your voice and said, "Wow, I wish I could have done that differently"? Now that I'm listening back to it.
No. I like it. I like it. It was very, very young sounding, very, very geschmack. I really do like it.
And if you could give yourself advice from 2025, what advice would you give yourself to Srully Williger back in 1995?
You want from singing, from production,
from whatever you want. What if you can tell yourself something and say, "Hey, you're starting off in your career. Here's something you should know or look out for."
Right. I would say that for those that are starting out, to really, if you know what you're doing and you're musical and you are in the singing, mode and you do sing already, I would say to really try to do things on your own, with your own art, your own talent, your own insight, your own, we call ourselves officially artists. Artists, what I think an artist is that, I have a beautiful painting in my house from a beautiful artist, from a beautiful painter.
You're taking it very literal, yeah.
Right. But for some reason, the name artists go to singers as well, right?
Because art can be many forms. It doesn't have to be something physical.
Right. So a person that's singing, if he is an artist, then let him paint his own art. Mm-hmm. Whether he fails or not, or whether he's going to be successful or not, you have to be the artist of your work. Of course, you want input from other people, but if you're just going to copy, and I didn't put out my album to be like Avram Fried, and I didn't put out my album to I want to be like Mordechai Ben David. Right. It was everything. I wanted to do my own style, my own way of doing things. So the only thing that I would possibly do, if you ask the question, is be your own artist. A little more freedom of you picking your own songs, you doing that. An interesting story also. I think we might have brought this up at this last year at the Amudim. Mm-hmm. Like I was in middle of towards the end of finishing the song selection for this album, The Voice of a New Generation. We had Klal on there. Yitzy Bald, we learned in Tarvadas. We were learning. I was in Gaman learning in Carlo in Tarvadas, and he was a Bach in Tarvadas, and we saw each other every day. So he came over to me with a song called, I don't know if you remember if we said it then.
I knew. You tell me it's called.
A song called Sameach Sameach Tesamach. And I said, this is crazy. This is a crazy song. Right? Is it a crazy song? 100%. It's a great song, right? And I had it, Biyadi. It was Biyadi, this song. And I said, I remember I went to Yerachmiel Begun, and I said, hey, this is, let's put this on the album. He goes, okay, show it to Yisrael Lam. So I went to Yisrael Lam and showed it to him. I said, he go, yeah, but you have that style. You have already Klal. So I didn't put it on my album, and obviously, and it went, Chas v'shalom, no tinies. I'm saying,
and a year or two later, Mendy Wall drops his debut album, and that's the title.
Debut, which is right. So Chas v'shalom, no tinies on Yerachmiel, no tinies on Yisrael Lam with Lagabi, this song. But hey, whose album is it? Is it mine?
Right.
But so it wasn't so much more, but something like that. No, you didn't. So there's a little, you want
to be more assertive and believe in yourself and say, no, I really think this is good. I want to put it on the album.
Right. Or you know what? At least let me have it. Let me take it. Let me put it in my back pocket for another album. You know, but I probably Yitzy didn't want to hold it on to either. You know, and then eventually it went to mending it. But you know, Gesundheit. High. But there's a lot of stories like that.
Right. You know, Srully, are you ever going to go back to the studio and start releasing tracks again?
I would put it this way. I would love to.
Mm-hmm.
The costs did not come down. I thought when, you know, all of a sudden things started becoming digital, you know, okay, today you could produce an album basically on a laptop, you know?
Correct.
You don't have to have you don't have to go to $1 million studio today. You know, you go to a basement and you set something up. You buy
Pro
a mic
Tools, or you have one of those programs and a good microphone, and that's it.
And then boom, and then everything is digital. You don't need the soundproof rooms. You don't need this. You don't need that. You know, but I thought it would become less. Actually, it did not. The prices of studios did not come down.
No.
Prices of musicians did not come down.
Correct.
You know, and then you're going to Israel because this guitarist is there. Okay, that you could already send tracks, but it's still going to cost you close to $100,000 probably these days to produce really, really well.
Or you could do a single for $5,000 to $7,000 every month.
Right. So so times that times 10, and times that you do a single and whatever. You know, I definitely you know, I have the you know, the Yates. I definitely have the Yates of horror for it.
Okay.
But you never know. You know, when songs come across and people always ask me, you know, like you mentioned the Kalbach albums. Those are. Anywhere I go in the world, the number one thing they tell me, even nothing to do with Huklal, is the Kalbach album.
Yom Nairoim and Shabbos
Yom Nairoim. I mean, look, the amount of calls before Yom Nairoim, they get and the thank you, Bemis, really the thank yous I get.
Right.
He taught me. So you know, it's a beautiful thing. The truth is that should really, let's say, the Yom Nairoim album, that should really be done again. With new updated stuff and updated songs and updated sound. I did that with Srully Nachfolger. That should something like a Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur album is people that really, really want.
Correct.
Again, so we'll see. You know, you just got to do it, as they say.
Srully, thank you so much for your time. We're looking forward to hearing more from you, and I guess have a good rest of your day. I'm going to play you out with Kel El Yoin. I don't know. It's one of my favorite songs off the album.
Really?
Not the favorite.
Beautiful.
Not the favorite. One of the favorite, because it's a great song.
Yeah, it's very good. That's a great produced song. Miami Boys Choir is in there. Yerachmiel Begun is on there. It's a lot of fun. It's a great song.
Perfect. Srully, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Waiting for the next 30.
Amen. Emerit Hashem.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is the one and only Srully Williger. Here he is with Kel El Yoin off Voice of a New Generation. You're listening to the Z Report Live right here, J Network Scoop Radio, Nachum Segal Network.